Let's just touch on some of the current policy that exists in Zambia and some of the big hindrances when it comes to labor and labor productivity.
Well, hi, thank you very much. Well, first of all, just to give a little bit of background, this ILO-IMF initiative, it's a broader initiative to support a dialogue on policy strategies and programs for employment creation in 3 pilot countries. First with Bulgaria, the Dominican Republic, and in Zambia. The whole idea is the conferences are intended to promote a tripartite dialogue among social partners, meaning the government, the employers, and the labor unions in each country. I think it comes at a very important time for Zambia because Zambia has been one of the best performers in the region in terms of overall economic growth, but that growth hasn't translated into poverty reduction. The absolute poverty rate is still about 63%. You also have problems, some of the problems in the labor market are such that the growth of informal sector employment has far outstripped the growth in formal sector, and ideally, ultimately, you would want a much larger participation in the formal sector because generally employees are more productive when they're in formal sector employment.
Okay, so let's just take it a step back and also look at the employment contracts that we see. We know in Zambia at some point we would see verbal contracts, not written contracts. There wouldn't actually be a law in place. So participation within the employment scenario perhaps would be hindered by the fact that there weren't proper rights for labor, but at the same time perhaps started to benefit a little bit more what we see on the private sector front. Is there a middle ground that can be found, Perry?
Well, I think there certainly is. I think one of the things the conference, it was very lively debate, but there were really no strong firm conclusions yet. I think it was really the first step. But we did, one of the presentations was looking at other resource-rich countries and trying to draw some lessons, and certainly one thing that could be an issue is the labor policies, and that will have to be looked at more closely. The question being, are the labor policies encouraging workers and firms to operate in the informal sector rather than in the formal sector?
Absolutely. So, Perry, we know that this has been on the agenda for quite some time. I mean, President Michael Sata has been talking about it quite a bit to also increase the minimum wage of workers and to ensure that there is maximum protection that comes to the fore. And, you look at South Africa as an example, and we know that the labor unions here are very powerful and also perhaps deter private sector growth going forward because there is a concern about wage negotiations. Every single year we see the same thing happening. You're talking about this tripartite dialogue that actually occurs, that is occurring right now in Zambia. What is your sense? Do you think that we can actually find a way to make all parties happy?
Well, I think so, and I think yes, it's true that the PF and Michael Sata their position is much more populist. They're very concerned about delivering on their promises to put more money in the pockets of the average person. I think the Minister of Labor who hosted and sat through most of the conference, the day and a half conference, he's a former labor leader, and I think that certainly he understands being on the other side. And I think that the tone, the labor unions participated and also the Employers Federation participated in the conference, and I think it was rather constructive. So I think that's probably a good step. But, there's a lot more work that needs to be done to get to the point where there's a real overall framework of coherent policies that affect the labor market.
Fantastic, Perry. We have to leave it there. Thank you so for joining us. Great to have you on the program. Perry Perone, head of IMF Zambia.